All right, let's see. Is everything working? Hello, everyone. It's like I forgot how to do everything. Hey guys, Spider-Man, Mav, Mo, thanks for showing up. Hello. Got some interesting topics today. That is for sure. Thanks for dropping by, everybody. First off, welcome. So I had a couple people who recently are dropping in. They either know me from different shows or something, but for those who don't know, I'm 3-bit. I am a CG generalist in the industry, working on TV commercials for different brands, and I also like to talk gaming on here. And on a subset of shows, of course, like Fun Speculation. And I've been bought exclusively by Fun Speculation at this point. I'm usually just on his shows. But I used to be on like Boom's show, a couple other. I used to be on Boom's, Mads Gaming, a couple other shows. This community is amazing. So love y'all. Thanks for dropping on. Spider-Man says Sony's finished or they should take the deal. Yeah, I'm definitely going to get into that. I initially had a subset of topics I wanted to go through today, and boom, some huge news came from this FTC case, and Sony has to provide some documents. So I will be talking about that, and a bit about a couple things, right? I want to talk a bit about Starfield and some entitlement issues there. VR and gaming, I think, is super important. And I actually thought it'd be interesting if I start ending or having a segment where I kind of go into movies and gaming and how to animate and things like that. If you guys are interested on the development side of things, because I am an animator, and that would be kind of cool. So we call it like 3-bit tips or I don't know what to call it yet, but it'll be a segment on the show. So for those who are watching it later, thanks for tuning in. For people in the chat, Pong, Spider, everybody who's in the chat, appreciate y'all dropping by. It means a lot. So should we jump in? What should we do? Should we just jump straight in to this FTC thing? Hello. I'm only here in case 3-bit messes up and spills together. That's been a fear of mine for a while, that I'm going to say something that that is technically like insider knowledge. That's why I haven't streamed in a bit, because yeah. But I think I've been doing pretty good. All right, let's jump in. There's a couple things I wanted to go. This one. Yeah, let's talk about this first. So, the FTC case. For those who don't know, the FTC denied Sony's motion and ordered the company to produce some documents requested by Microsoft subpoena. The motion was granted in part of Microsoft and denied in part of Sony. So Sony only needs to show their exclusivity deals from 2019 to present. So interesting news coming out of this. I seen Pong and Psycho in chat talking about that Sony has over 150,000 contracts with 60,000 companies. I didn't see. Oh, actually, I see that in this. We could blow this up a little bit. It says right there that they have over 150,000 contracts with 60,000 companies. It says across various databases. So I'm thinking, like, is that solely PlayStation, or is that going into the movie side of Sony as well? I'm not sure. Sony Corp. So anybody in chat, if you guys know that, it says across various databases. So I'm pretty sure that goes a little bit outside of just PlayStation, but you guys could let me know on that. What I am interested in is being that they have to show their deals from 2019 to present. Games like Final Fantasy VII Remake. See, I might be in the gaming business, but I'm not a lawyer, right? I have a decent grasp on like the pipeline of like game development and stuff. But what I do not know is at what point in development does Sony or Square Enix draw up these contracts? Like, is it toward the end of development, or is it as soon as development starts, they're drawing up some contract with like Sony and Square Enix? To me, it makes more sense like maybe in the middle of development where they have actually something to show. But who knows? Because if it's at the end of development where Sony and Square Enix starts drawing up contracts, then I can see them showing the details of a game like Final Fantasy VII Remake. If it's in the beginning, Final Fantasy VII Remake has been in development for quite some time. It was revealed during Sony's press conference during E3 2015. I actually have that up because I'm fancy. Ooh, look at this. Bam. So Final Fantasy VII Remake was first shown at Sony's press conference during E3 2015. So that's what I'm interested on, because if it was before that, they're not going to see those initial contracts for a game like Final Fantasy VII. If I don't know, but maybe they'll see the email. So that's like the interesting thing about this. It's not just contracts; it's emails. It's a lot. So on third party. So that is very interesting to me. So if it proceeds a time needing to show that game, that's one thing. That's just for Final Fantasy VII, right? There's so many other third-party deals. I mean, it says here how many contracts there are, right? There's so many third-party deals, and it feels like a lot just looking on the outside of how many games skip Xbox and Nintendo sometimes, right? How many games just go straight to the PlayStation? On the outside, it feels like a lot. But to have actual documentation where we get to actually have like a physical number from 2019 and up, right? We don't get to see from 2012, which is what Microsoft initially wanted. But it's still a lot. It's still quite a lot that they have to show. It could bring to light, and this is something Pong brought up on several shows, is that by Sony sort of bringing up to the FTC and complaining to CMA, all these different companies, that look at them, they're taking away Call of Duty. not thinking Microsoft is going to say anything or fight back, or where and it the way it happened was kind of funny too. Like, it seemed like Microsoft was like just sort of holding their tongue while Sony was sort of blabbering, flying Brussels, different places. Jim Ryan, and now they are involved in the case where they could have initially just been, more hands off. But now that they're hands on, we get to see what's going on in the industry, and the repercussions of this is, I feel like it could be really big. Depending, I mean, we're going to see emails, right? We have no idea what's in these emails where Jim Ryan is probably talking about things, dealing with Microsoft, like, hey, let's not let's actually push in and make sure that these games don't go to Game Pass, right? Because we know there's court documentation of games or contracts that deal with Game Pass, not putting your game on Game Pass. So seeing like emails dealing with that will be very interesting, and I feel like a lot of journalists need to start doing their jobs, because I still haven't seen a lot of articles on this. I've seen like mostly the community talk about it, but this is, to me, this is pretty big. I don't know. What do you guys think? I know. I feel like the deadline for this was like August or something, or like when they actually have to show everything. I think it was in August, but I'm not quite sure. We could read over the document if you guys are really interested. Psycho says that's one of the reasons why Microsoft wanted to go back to 2012. Yeah, yeah. Because games like Final Fantasy VII, it's been in development for a long time. But and that's such a primary case. Like, that's a game that people constantly bring up because it was initially supposed to end, like it was supposed to come out for different systems, right? um it was supposed to be a timed exclusive, but I bet you there's documentation that like either extends that, uh or maybe Square Enix just has such a good relationship where like, it's fine, we'll just leave it on. I don't know. I'm sure there's some documents about that. Big Mama says it's against Sony, so they aren't going to report it on it. Yeah, it's so crazy. Like, this to me is gaming history, right? Like, this court case of ABK, of Xbox versus Sony is, like, I feel like I'm living in a moment of gaming history. So when people, there's some people in the community where they're like, why do you want to talk about it, or like, I'm tired of talking about it, and I get it. um but this stuff fascinates me, as being in the industry, and it also feels like it has a lot of repercussions of where the industry is headed. So, that to me is worth at least an article, or articles on. And not to say there hasn't been articles and stuff, but it's, to me, it's super just. I love how Pong says it, corp on corp violence. Fun Speculation says journalists aren't going to talk too much about anything that paints Sony in a negative light, as they don't want the ABK deal to pass bias. Yeah, it really does feel like that. Like, why are smaller, Twitter people talking about it? Like, why am I not seeing it on the, like, IGN or something? This is big to me. So we finally get to see contracts, about third party deals. Like, Sony has pretty much been money hatting a lot of, different games, and we finally get to see it. So, what is being said behind the scenes with these companies? Like, what has been like, what has been the communication like, with Jim Ryan and Square Enix? Like, that to me is super interesting. I would love to see that. Psycho says COD is the main reason. Yeah, COD, I feel like It's so crazy though. Like the industry is the gaming industry is so much on Sony's side that their reporting is biased in a way where they either choose not to report on things, or even if it slightly paints Microsoft in a positive light, it's it's sort of put with like that like a connotation like, oh, Microsoft made a controller um made a controller, or let's just say, oh, they're providing games like for different communities and like Minecraft and things like that, but they'd be like, but what about the future, you know? it's they always have like that sort of end statement. Like they'll say what Microsoft has been doing, like Microsoft is putting Minecraft on other platforms, but what about the future? I feel like a lot of articles and journalists are like that with Microsoft. And Mav talked about this last night. It could just be that Microsoft is seen in a light with people, and it's hard for them to sort of be out of that, where Microsoft is this big bad corporation, and journalists sort of fiend on that quite a bit. Wilfrey says, "What up, 3-bit? Called it. Sony was gonna burn themselves by snitching." Yeah, that's pretty much what's happening here. It is, um, it's like, hey, you kept going after these regulators to a point where I don't know how normal that is. Like, if you really don't want another company to buy something, I never seen it to the level. Maybe I just don't know much other cases, which I don't, but I never seen another company basically like fly the regulators, like, hey, I don't want that company to buy them, and have constant meetings and say they're gonna ruin my company if they buy this, and they kind of put themselves in a corner. Like, there's a reason why all these other big companies want this deal to happen. Right? You have Tencent in the room saying, sure, let the deal go through. You have uh, everybody pretty much supporting this deal except for Sony, for obvious reasons, and then Google, which is like, it's not the best person to have in your corner, you know. Um, so to me, the deal should be passed without much concessions, but I do understand that there's a lot of politics involved, a lot of corporations, a lot of these regulatory bodies are on Sony's side. It feels like they use their talking points for a lot of it. Like, they don't include Nintendo in the conversation of the console space, even though Nintendo makes so much money and has such a huge base of loyal gamers. Like, they basically said, Nintendo gamers, you don't matter because you're a kid's console. Even if you bring up data that prohibits that, like, even you say, here is the age range of people who own a Switch and actually play on the Switch, which is not really kids, to be honest. um, it still doesn't matter because they use Sony's talking points, because Sony thought that that would be damaging to include Nintendo, because you see that the market is big, that there's so many other ways to get into the market. Like, look, Nintendo, they don't have a super powerful console, but what they do have is a loyal fan base. They have quality games, and that's where people will go, and that would defeat the argument for Sony. So they like, they don't count, which is exactly what the CMA and all these other regulatory bodies started to use. They use Sony's talking points, but there's a lot of politics involved with this case, not just with those regulations like FTC, EU, whatever, but the media too. Like, the way the media phrases things to paint Sony, to paint Microsoft in a bad light, is is something that's been very clear to me over the course of this case. Like more and more, it's becoming so obvious to me um how many Sony fans are in journalism. It's like I wish that journalism didn't get to the point where they didn't have to keep retracting their articles or basically saying, like, you had a person from the CMA say, like, where is but don't worry, you guys can still play it on my PlayStation. Like it's like entitlement for their platform across the board. A lot of PlayStation um, fans have this entitlement to their platform, like with the Starfield shenanigans, right? You had like Phil has been very clear about the plans for Starfield and the plan for mini games. I feel like people take what he says and either twist it or and deem Microsoft as the friendly person um, that puts their games everywhere. So they'll do that with all of their games, including Starfield. So Aaron says, to be honest, I don't agree that the media is framing it in one or the other way. Some are, some aren't, but I think it has more to do with our different algorithms. Could be. I personally, what I've seen is a lot of like, for example, the Chris Strange, who wrote an article that seemed pretty biased in my opinion, and he had to completely rewrite the article because he was agreeing with Lulu. Um, you had other articles that had like really positive uh, headlines towards Sony's side of things. Um, so I don't know. I feel like I'm right on that, but maybe it is my algorithm, like of who I'm following. It could be, but I again, I don't just see this with like the media. I see this like with the actual regulatory bodies too. Like they're using Sony's talking points, which is my point. Back from the Dead says, and yes, it's exclusive. Apparently, that wasn't clear enough messaging. Yes. So what Phil has been saying since day one, and it's so crazy. Like he's been saying the same thing since the Bethesda showcase, I guess, since way back then, when they first started to get together and they had their showcase talking about the future, saying that the games will go pretty much where Game Pass exists. That was one thing he said. It'll be a case by case basis. That's the other thing he said. And that we're not taking games away, dealing with legacy titles. And I feel like that part is where people get really confused and say like you're taking games away, right? Because the legacy titles refers to games that are already on that platform. So like ESO, Elder Scrolls Online. If PlayStation makes a PlayStation 6, um, ESO will probably most likely be on that platform, right? It's like an online game. It's you could play it on Xbox, PC, PlayStation, so it makes sense for that game to continuously be supported on PlayStation, right? That is a legacy title. You have Doom, for example. Doom is already on PlayStation. They're not taking that game away, right? If there is a special extra hell edition of Doom that comes out, then that is also going to be on PlayStation. That's most likely going to be on the Switch. Legacy titles, that refers to the games that are already basically on the platform. They're not taking that game away. They're not stopping support for those games. Like when the deal happened, they didn't all of a sudden be like, okay, no future DLC for Elder Scrolls Online is going on PlayStation because we own it now. So now you can only get that on Xbox. They didn't do that. Every deal that was still in contract, like a game they owned, um, a game they owned, like Ghostwire, they honored that contract. That was their game, and they were like, okay, PlayStation gets it exclusively, right? Um, Aaron says, gotta say though, making the Outer Worlds 2 exclusive feels a little bit petty. If they're serious case by case, you know. I mean, is it compared to what Sony's been doing? I mean, like it's legacy titles. So every other game, the next Elder Scrolls, for example, is probably going to be exclusive. Outer Worlds 2, Hellblade 2, exclusive. Um, like Sony's literally been doing it for so long, so I don't know. Maybe it just doesn't feel petty because Sony's been doing it for so long, and then like Xbox gamers have had like nothing for so long, where they literally have been watching Sony do it for like 10 plus years. And Microsoft does it for like 3, 4, or 5 games, and then maybe that's why the impact feels so big with Starfield. Um, and the fact that Microsoft honors contracts like Outer Worlds was before they bought them. Now they are buying them and are funding those studios. So I don't know. It could be petty. Maybe I'm seeing it differently. But every other game, I mean, it's been kind of explained already. Like Phil said in one interview, I'll see if I can find it. But Phil said in this one interview where he said he hates the messaging that Xbox has to put all their games on like PlayStation. Like they feel like they have to. Um, I'm paraphrasing, but like basically the expectation where people are confused on his messaging. Like he said, that's something he didn't like. He wants across the board, like here's what's happening with our games, unless there's some contract that you can have an expectation of this game is going on Xbox, PC, mobile, and that's within their ecosystem. And whenever when he talks about like exclusives being bad, Xbox was like the first studio. They set some precedent that hasn't been done before. Like before Phil came in and start putting things on PC, for example, that's not really exclusive. Like it's exclusive within their ecosystem, I guess, but you can play PC games in a variety of ways. So it's like you're already accessing a whole other audience by putting your games on PC. And is it really exclusive at that point? I guess it is because they still benefit from it. Maybe that's why people are mad. Like they still benefit from putting games on PC. Sony doesn't see it that way. That's why they release their games way later on PC. They don't do day and date. Um, Aaron says, no, oh no, I mean, I don't really compare them to. I just remember all the statements regarding case by case, what feels right, and then they cut off a player base from a multi-plat. That's fair. Um, the case by case basis refers to like the games that they either had contracts to and couldn't do it, like Ghostwire Tokyo, or Ghostwire Tokyo and Deathloop that had a contract, so that was the case by case. Or a game like Minecraft, like that has a pretty big install base, so it doesn't really make sense to make that exclusive. That's the case by case, or a game that's already been out on PlayStation, like you're saying, like Outer Worlds, um, Elder Scrolls Online, Doom, Wolfenstein. Those games were already on PlayStation. If they release like a patch for it or DLC, it doesn't necessarily make sense to get rid or only provide DLC to one platform if it's already out. Those are the case by case basis. Um, every other thing, unless it's like ABK where they kind of have to, I'm pretty sure they're just going for exclusives. But I think a lot of people just don't talk about that or uh, or kind of confused about his statements on that, what the case by cases is, or what they talked about in the past with legacy titles. I think they just think that Xbox is going to put their games on the PlayStation and Switch. Halo, you're going on Nintendo Switch. You're going on PlayStation. We want our games everywhere, which is fair because they kind of message it like that sometimes. But you really just have to read what Phil's actually been saying, which is when he talks about the case by case and what the details of that is. Um, and they're still going to have exclusive games. I think like that's where a lot of people get lost. They're like, "Oh, Microsoft they don't want exclusives anymore," which is fair because Phil's talked about it. But what he meant really was within their ecosystem. Like you can still have your games on mobile, on PC, and their console, and they benefit from that, right? Um, Against a competitor who's basically trying to lock their games to their just that platform. Like Sony doesn't want their games everywhere. They want their game on PlayStation within that ecosystem. They're starting to put their games on PC, which is awesome. Um, but I it feels like they've been doing it as like a pressure point, and they've been realizing that you can make a lot of money by accessing a whole other audience besides just your console. And the console market compared to the PC market, like here's like the PC market, here's like the console market. It's such a huge difference. And player base. So when they say like our games are Xbox PC, like they're accessing so many people by doing that. So in a way, Microsoft doesn't have exclusives, but they have an ecosystem. So Microsoft says something. Let me read this. Aaron says, "Oh yeah, I've been covering that a lot. My bad. I've been writing about games, news, interviews for over a decade. Awesome, man. Love it. The thing about Microsoft under Nadella is that I think I have higher expectations. So when Microsoft says something, I kind of want them to really practice that message all the way. They have been super humble in a lot of ways, which is what I think has given Phil so much positive support." Oh yeah, yeah, for sure, man. Um, and when I talk about like the bias, not knowing you were a journalist, when I talk about like the bias in the media, it's not pertaining to you at all. There are really good journalists out there who are doing the work, who are coming from a place where they do their research like you. They'll go in and look at the documents of what it's actually saying, um, and actually like does the work, seeing it from both perspectives, which I appreciate. I love journalism like that, where feels like the I was gonna say Nightcrawler, but that was kind of corrupt. That was kind of corrupt journalism from Jake Gyllenhaal. But no, the journalists that actually like do the job and come from a place, like you can have your personal opinion towards a company. I'm not saying that, but at least coming from a place that's fair. Um, but yeah, that's awesome. I I just wish a lot of people had that mentality of being fair and not letting their biases overtake an article to the point where it's kind of misleading. Hello, back from the dead. You say I definitely had to deal with the annoyance as a longtime Destiny gamer, even to the point of story and weapons that would help with Quest's 1 year exclusive to Sony. I forgot about that. Yeah, Sony's been doing that for a while. So that's why I'm interested in seeing these contracts. Um, I'm interested in seeing these contracts because we'll get more insight to why stuff like that happens. I mean, they own Bungie now, right? But stuff like Hogwarts, uh, where they're like, okay, exclusive quests, like what do those contracts look like um, between those companies? Like just from the nerd side of me, I want to know. Like I love the gaming industry. I love knowing about these deals and how they happen and what, like when you're developing a game, like what deals do they take, what parity clauses, what does that mean? Is it just features or is it technical things? Like I love knowing about that stuff. And Aaron says, believe me, there's fighting between writers as well. Oh yeah, yeah, I'm sure. I am sure. um I could see like people, I could see a lot of writers being frustrated. I've seen some writers be frustrated where they have a sense of journalistic integrity where they carry themselves a certain way, doing the research, doing all that different stuff. And then you have some other person like opinion piece, Xbox is gonna die, like there's such a disparity, and maybe that's what I'm seeing more of those because negativity goes into the limelight a lot more than positivity. So maybe that's why when you talked about the algorithm, maybe that's why I'm seeing those type of articles a lot more than the people who are doing the research, being having journalistic integrity. I think that's an interesting conversation for sure. Um, for sure, for sure. And thanks for dropping by, Aaron. Everybody who's in the chat, appreciate y'all for dropping on by. Um, yeah, appreciate you guys. So yeah, the contracts was a big talking point I wanted to get through today. There are a couple other things. So we had the Sony providing documents. I did have. We could go through the document, or something I did want to bring up is this one was the Final Fantasy 16 thing, which kind of relates to the document, so it's kind of like a good segue. Uh, and I'm pretty sure. So I want to know some of the contracts dealing with what he's saying, right? So question was saying regarding the PC version of Final Fantasy 16. During a broadcast, your comments became a topic of discussion. Please, could you tell us again? Yoshida says, firstly, for Final Fantasy 16, um, due to the time exclusive, I cannot say this word, and I feel like I always say it wrong, but I'm gonna say it wrong like proudly. Due to the time exclusivity, I say tivity, but I think it's just exclusivity. I cannot say that word. It's like, I don't know, it feels wrong to say it that way. Contract with SIE. We cannot release other platform versions for 6 months after the PS5 version is released. I suspect many people probably don't know why we enter such contracts. And he says, from the player's perspective, I think they perceive it as something like it is for the hardware manufacturer to sell its own hardware during the contract period. Let's blow this up a little bit. Of course, I think there's also that kind of intention on the hardware manufacturer's part. However, from our point of view, the technical support, where was I? I completely lost where I was. This manage on our own and so on. Also, by not developing on the premise of multiple platforms, we could invest more main hours into things such as building the game and optimization. In addition, we can also do promotions together globally. It's funny. I really want to talk about the globally thing. That's funny. We can do promotions together globally. That makes me wonder, how much would this be if it was converted to money. Technological and promotional support are things we would like to receive if we can receive them. It's like, bro. Aaron says, I've written a lot of opinion pieces and I put a lot of artsy or political views I review. So I'm definitely guilty there. With that said, opinion pieces is often great for traffic, for sure. As well, I like listening to you, so it goes both ways. Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, I'm stating my opinion, right? I have a bias towards Xbox, and I'm pretty clear about that. Like, I wouldn't be, how do I phrase this? I discovered my love for animation and being in the industry, doing TV commercials and things like that, because of Halo, right? because of because of Halo, it was like a ripple effect. I played Halo. I wanted to know how to make videos, so I looked up like video tutorials on how to do Halo montages. So you can look at my older channel where I do a bunch of Halo montages. Throughout the montages, I realized that I want to animate Master Chief. How do you animate a game character? Would research how to do that, did stuff for that montage, and realized that I loved animation. That trickled into what I do now. So I always have like a sort of backing deep love for at least Halo, right? And I mostly play within the Xbox ecosystem. So I try to be pretty clear with that, because I am coming from a place of bias, right? And and I think it is important as a journalist or as a podcaster to come from a place where you're speaking your truth, right, from your biases. Everyone has their own perspective, but as long as you're honest about certain things, I think it's fine. And a lot of people don't like talking about politics, but I feel like it can be important to talk about in certain aspects, especially I mean, a lot of great stories are political. So I have a different perspective on it than other people might. There's a lot of great stories that have that are things funded from our history, like Bioshock or even Star Wars. Star Wars is basically about politics, right? If you really think about it. So I find that stuff interesting. Where was I? So yeah, talking about this article, it's really interesting to me because, and I have this thing, this funny meme I found. Where it says Square Enix limiting Final Fantasy VII remake, and he shoots the guy. At the bottom where it says like our fans are distancing themselves from the series, Final Fantasy 16 is still gonna sell very well, right? I think Final Fantasy as a series is super popular, has such a loyal fan base, and it's something I've always been very cognizant of. It's something I've always personally wanted to jump into, but because they usually skip Xbox by my primary platform, I usually don't, and I feel like if I jump in at 16, Final Fantasy 16, after there's been like 100 games, then I'm like, do I get the context of what the series is about, even if it's a separate story? Like these are things in the back of my head with the Final Fantasy franchise. Like I think Final Fantasy has always been a really interesting franchise to me. I played which one did I play? 15. It's the one with the, like, people say the boy band. People hated that one. I loved it. I thought it was great. I know Mav and them hated it. They talk because they're coming from a place where they played the other Final Fantasies. I played that one. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. They're like, no, this is not what the series is. I thought it was pretty cool, but this one, Final Fantasy 16. What I find interesting about this, and maybe I'm just coming from a different perspective on it, where he's basically saying that they have a close relationship with Sony. So they have they technical, basically Sony's like their tech support. They help them, and they wouldn't be able to do that, is what he's saying, without Sony support. But from my perspective, a lot more people would jump into the franchise if you sort of had, like, Final Fantasy to me is a big franchise, and you're disregarding PC. Like, I'm not even talking about Xbox. I'm talking like PC. You know, it to me it's like if you're only gonna put it on PlayStation, because at this point I'm seeing it as like a PlayStation game at this point. Like I don't even see Final Fantasy as a multi-platform game. Initially, I did for many years. I was like, Final Fantasy is like the Madden of JRPGs. Like it's everywhere. It's like, I don't know why I thought this, but like such a huge franchise, you could see it like PlayStation, Xbox. It's this big thing. But at this point, it's a Sony game. But to not even put it on PC is interesting to me. So you have like Sony sort of acting as a tech support, but disregarding platforms even for PC is interesting. Um, and I think they be saying some stuff I don't find true. Like Square Enix says a lot of things that I'm like, you guys are either lying or you're just like, what? Like what they were saying with Forspoken, for example. They were saying it's only possible on the PlayStation 5. It's designed exclusively for the PS5. Um, and clearly, when the game came out, it's like it wasn't as visually impressive, right? It's clearly possible on a multitude of platforms. The game wasn't optimized as much, and so when Square Enix comes out with articles like this, hey Poison, be sure to definitely go back when we in the video when you can. We talked about a lot, so definitely check that out. um with so when Square Enix comes out and says like they're helping them with technological support, and that the game uh that they can do promotions together globally. When I think globally, I think it'll at least happen on the PC, right? It's only on the PS5. Maybe I'm just seeing it differently. But whenever they talk about like technical things, like let me find some articles. I remember they were saying some crazy stuff about Forspoken. Like they were saying that it's only possible on the PS5. The very first trailer was saying designed for the PS5, and they're saying that they were saying with Forspoken, it's going to be the best designed open world game of all time, things like that. At this point, like you guys are interesting with some of your statements. Like I understand trying to hype a product, but there's a difference between hyping a product and kind of just being like we're not stupid. we kind of understand. So with this, he's kind of basically saying that the 6 month window for the PS5 version, and then after the 6 months, it will probably be on PC. So that's interesting. But again, I'm interested in Final Fantasy universe. It's just my base has always been Xbox focused. I loved Kingdom Hearts 2 was one of my favorite games for a while. Um, it was the only game I really played on the PS. What was it 3, 2? I can't remember. Um, Kingdom Hearts 2 was my favorite. Play a little bit of 3. Um, But the Kingdom Hearts franchise was definitely one of my favorite Square Enix franchises. When Square Enix sold off their Western division, to me that was the dumbest thing they could have done. Out of all the decisions they've made, just because you're talking about in this article, whoops, sorry, or you're talking about marketing together globally, and then they constantly have articles where they're disappointed with their amount. Forspoken didn't do very well. Now they're shoving that studio back into Square Enix. You have a lot of articles like that. And then you sell off your Western division, right? But to me, if you're going to, sorry for all the transitions, if you're going to have a studio that where you want more people to access your platform, to your games, being Square Enix, you would think you would want a variety of titles, right? Not just because Final Fantasy is like its own sort of like genre. It's like a niche in some ways. Like a lot of people are gonna buy it. Don't get me wrong, but like there are people where that's definitely marketable too. And then you have another market where they like games like Tomb Raider or Guardians of the Galaxy or Avengers, those type of games too. So it's like by having that Western division, you have another market that people who would have never bought Final Fantasy would buy an Avengers, would buy a Guardians, those type of games. So to me, that's why the deal of them selling off the Western division was so dumb. Because you just killed like a core audience, a potential audience base for your company. That's why I really want to be in charge of these companies sometimes. Like when I see decisions like that, I'm like, put me in charge. I'll be the CEO of Square Enix. I'm sure it's very difficult. But whenever I see decisions like that, I'm just like, I would do it completely differently. That's just me. Poison Maniac says, Embracer got a steal. Yes. Yes, they did. That's crazy. And I think they just recently sold off, was it Tomb Raider? Embracer pretty much got a lot of their property on like a deal, like a steal deal. And then it felt like they were just they did that. They bought them, but they weren't really planning to do much with certain franchises. They were just kind of like, yeah, we'll buy it. This is like nothing. And then sell it off for way more. Is what they were planning to do with a lot of IP and franchises and stuff like that. That's why whenever I see like articles with Square Enix, I'm like, I always look at it like with a side eye because I'm like, you guys be making some really dumb business decisions from my point of view. Because if you are worried about sales and like you like, and I remember we all felt this way. Like a lot of people in the Fun Speculation family, go back to our old shows when we talk about Square Enix before they even announced anything about their Western division. We all felt that Square Enix hates their Western division. Like before there was articles on it or something, we're like, wow, the way they treat these games, even if it sold really well, they'd be like, we don't really like them. The sales wasn't to our expectations, you know. They would always say that for their Western division, and for like Final Fantasy and stuff, they never said a thing. So for a while, it felt to us like you guys really hate your Western division, huh? And then like it came out that they basically were like, yeah, screw you guys, we're selling you. So Square Enix is very interesting, and I could talk about them for a while, but it's like the fact that you guys sold off your Western division, which had a audience base that people would only buy. Like for a lot of it, I would only buy a lot of Square Enix titles from their Western division. Me as an audience member, right? Like, not even jumping into Final Fantasy, there are other games within their Western division that I would purchase. That to them is a market that they're not catering to. Now they're just like Final Fantasy. That's what we're focusing on. So they just lost, like, to me, they lost a big portion of their market, or the Western division. This is dumb. Just Key says, like the hat. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Froggy says they also dove right into NFTs, which seemed strange. Yeah, didn't they sell off the? I seen an article on this, and I wasn't sure how true it was, but I know they are dealing with NFTs. But it also there was an article that said that Square Enix was selling off their Western division for NFTs. Like, that's why they were selling them off, or something, to fund their NFTs, or something like that. Closing Maniac said they had unattainable standards, I think, for the Western. Yeah, it really felt that way. But you think about it, it's kind of dumb when you really think about it, because those are gamers that only would play those games. So maybe it was unattainable for your standards, but you were bringing in a whole other market that would never play a Final Fantasy game. That's where I'm coming from. Froggy says, yeah, most people they think did well. They would say had disappointing earnings. Yeah, yeah. There would be games like, oh, that sold pretty dang well, and then they were like, it wasn't to our expectations. Like, what the heck were you expecting then? You must have had really insane expectations if that didn't do well compared to other games that came out. Now look at you with Forspoken. Now look at you. Forspoken has that studio that made Forspoken is now inside of Square Enix. I don't think they close it necessarily, right? It's basically just they're kind of a separate branch, and now they're back within Square Enix. So now they've been on punishment. They're being put in a corner, like, bad. Your sales wasn't as good as I thought. The game wasn't as good. Now you're in a corner. Like, the way they punish their studios, to me, is I haven't seen any other company treat their studios like that. Posey Maniac says Embracer sold the Tomb Raider IP for $600 million to Amazon after buying the Western division for $200 million. With that IP from Square. Yeah. I always thought, and I think Pong actually said that he kind of predicted that. As soon as Embracer bought, so props to Pong. And Embracer, when they bought their Western division and had the rights to Tomb Raider, I was thinking maybe they would hold it for someone like Microsoft after the Activision deal, or some other company. But I always thought they basically bought it for a steal and they were going to sell it. I never thought they would maintain it. Pong didn't think they would maintain it. Sort of just like a buy it for cheap, sell it off for a lot more. Froggy, how many games need to get ruined by using oddball engines before these megacorps figure out it's better in most cases to use a known engine? You see, I think it's beneficial to use a custom engine. Microsoft is in an interesting case where they have a lot of engines. You have the ID Tech engine. You have a lot of people familiar with the Unreal Engine, like the Coalition, which they are masters of the Unreal Engine. Hellblade being on the Unreal. Those are like licensed, right? But then you have like ID Tech isn't necessarily being used by everybody. You have Call of Duty in a way, Call of Duty is a modified version of the ID Tech engine, um, unless that's changed. It's like a earlier. They took it from like ID Tech 2, and then it became like it's just a modified version of that. And they kept making improvements. Aaron said, they licensed it outright, not sold, and still just a rumor or leased. I'm not sure. If anyone could get clarity on that, I'm actually not sure. I just remember seeing an article on it, like briefly, like oh okay. Did they just lease out the IP, or did they sell it to Amazon, or what rights did they even sell to? Was it just the movie rights? Was it game rights too? If anyone has any clarity on that, I would love to talk about it. Poison Maniac says, correction, I don't know if this changes or mean anything, but it says lease the rights. Okay. So they probably just told Amazon, like, I wonder if it's like a time thing, or if it's like, if it's time thing, like you, in 5 years, you have the rights to make any game or movie, or if it's like you can make X amount of movies, X amount of games before the rights go back to us. I would like to see that contract to see what that looks like. What a lease contract for an IP like Tomb Raider that looks like. Froggy to right, why do you think it's better to use a custom engine? So I know why you're asking that. You're asking about the oddball engines because of Halo Infinite, right? There are a lot of examples of an engine where it's better to use a custom engine for specific games. And also when you use an engine as popular as Unreal, and if you're a bigger game studio, a lot of your profits do go to Unreal, especially if you make over a certain amount of money, a certain amount of sales. So if you're taking into account of like, I can make this game on Unreal, but X amount, 10-20% of sales goes to Unreal, and you want to make all of it, then that could be a consideration. If you are building your game, for example, a lot of people have this feeling with Unreal that a lot of Unreal games feel the same. You can change that. You can really go into Unreal, try to make it feel like its own property, its own game. Then you're kind of fighting the engine at that point, and making it trying to make it feel like a unique experience. And some game developers, sometimes they custom make an engine for a particular experience. Like Starfield, for example, is using the creation engine, and the reason why they use a creation engine is that studio is very comfortable with that engine. They could keep building upon what's already there, as opposed to using something like Unreal, like and it's easier to optimize for games in a custom engine. Like if I'm using a custom engine and I know specifically what this game is going to be and what I need to optimize for, it makes optimization a lot easier in some cases. Foggy, I am talking about all the in-house hours used to create, maintain, and learn the engine. That's money too. True. True. It's like a trade-off, right? I used to question that too. Um, like why would I spend the time to create a whole new engine, maintain it, spend millions of dollars creating my own engine when I could just use Unreal and then use their profits? And really it comes down to the team, what their goals are. Because you could make any game with Unreal. Um, there's certain things, like for example with Halo doesn't use Unreal. but their goal for using a custom engine um, really kind of goes back to Halo 1. They used the Blam engine for Halo 1, and they've been using different versions of that same engine. Like Halo 1, it's kind of crazy. Halo 1 and technically Halo, not even technically, Halo 1 and Halo 5 are using like the same engine. If you want to look at Halo 1 and Halo 5, they drastically, Halo 1 is a very old game. Um, but a main development thing for them with that engine was keeping the feeling of Halo. And sometimes, while you can keep coding in an engine, try to make it feel different, sometimes it doesn't. And they really want to keep the feel for Halo, so they use that engine. So it depends on the studio and what their goals are, honestly. Like, if I had millions of dollars or unlimited budget, I would weigh the pros and cons of using a custom engine. Like, if I'm using a custom engine, we actually use one. For those who don't know, I worked at Ubisoft. Aaron brings up Snowdrop. I worked at Ubisoft, and they used custom engine, but they use it in a way that benefited future games. So if I'm working on Assassin's Creed, instead of kind of starting some things from scratch or whatever have you, you can have like data sets of motion capture performances within the engine. I hope I'm not leaking anything, but you can have like motion capture presets, let's say like things that are in Assassin's Creed, where you went in a mocap studio, did different mocap, whatever, and you can apply it to another game, and that all within the same engine. So it really depends on the game. Like, sometimes it can be really beneficial to have your own engine as opposed to doing it through Unreal or something like that. Like, there's a reason why EA keeps trying to force people. Like Froggy just said, like, seems EA has a lot of issues forcing use of Frostbite engine too. Yeah, it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but it depends on what your goal is as a studio, whether it's worth it or not to invest. If that engine will benefit future games, which is why Halo used Blam. But we're seeing how that's turning out, right? It doesn't always work out, but it can sometimes. Aaron says, to be honest, I do think Snowdrop looks like such an amazing engine, from Mario versus Rabbids to World and Conflict to The Division. Diversity when it comes to output. What are your thoughts on Snowdrop? So I had some experience with the Snowdrop engine. Briefly, I did some of the menu work for um a couple different games. Did some stuff with Mario versus Rabbids. Did some stuff with Extraction. Um, what people like about the Frostbite engine or Snowdrop, I think Snowdrop's shaders. That's another reason for using custom engine, is the way you can program lighting, and things are, it handles lighting differently in one engine as opposed to the other. If we want to get really technical, but I love the way Snowdrop handles shaders and lighting. Um, what I basically mean by that is, like, when a light touches a certain material, how it reflects. It, I think, is beautiful, especially in Division, where you can see, like, if there's like snow or something on a corner of a car, and a light will bounce off of it and create like a shine on the corner. That's possible in Unreal, right? But the way it looks, because it's a different engine, wow, I think it looks great. And also, Division is super well optimized. When you use an engine like Unreal, you can sometimes see the same problems with different games. Like you'll see like Unreal has had a problem for a while of loading in certain materials and dealing with LODs. So if I'm making a custom engine, I'm like, I know Unreal has that problem. I'm not going to use that. Uh, like there's so many games in Unreal where you'll see like a object try and load in. Like let's say I'm loading in this phone. It'll have like a really blurry version far in the distance, and as it gets closer, it's supposed to get more detailed, right? Because having a super detailed object from far away, uh, it it's bad for resources. So what they do is create what's called LODs, which stands for level of detail. I'm getting to my dev side if you're not noticing. So they create LODs. It's like LOD 3, which is the least detailed, I think. Like, so this one isn't as detailed. LOD 2 is like, it's kind of getting more detailed, and then like close, where it's super detailed. Um, Thank you. I think it's a dope case too. Um, so I feel like a lot of Unreal Engine 4 games had the problem where when you're blending in from LOD 3 to LOD 1, sometimes when you get when a character comes really close to an object like a car or phone, it didn't load in quickly, or whatever the problem is. And it wasn't always because of the specs of the machine. Sometimes the engine or how they handled those LEDs was like a problem I saw in a lot of Unreal games. That's just an example, right? There's a lot of nerd reasons why you can use a custom engine. And Aaron says like walking around in New York and all the Christmas lights. Yeah, dude, like I think that engine is really nice and beautiful. I'm lucky to have seen some people use it. It's a great engine. Um, it's really well like Division 2, for those who haven't played Division 2 after their next gen update, it's one of the most smooth um experiences I've had on a multiplayer game like that, where it's like open world, and like you're just walking around. It's like 60 plus frames, and just going around the city, in the different zones, and you're fighting, you're throwing like bombs, there's no frame rate drops. It feels great. So it's not always a great thing to just go opt for something like Unreal. Uh, but Unreal, the benefit of using Unreal is UE5 is changing the way we even handle materials. Like, we use my phone example here. Actually, let's use my PS5 controller. So with my PS5 controller, you have so many. Let's say it's super detailed. It's like 1,000 polygons or something. And right now, how we're handling game development is using LODs. We use LD3, 2, 1. Um, with things like Nanite, they could basically just be like, screw it. You don't have to make LD3, 2, 1. You could just make the highest quality version, and we'll handle the polygons differently. So that way, like making different versions of models, like Aaron, Aaron just said like the metal plastic material in all UE3 games during 360. Yeah, that was ugly to me. Um, the way we're handling like polygons and stuff is changing. So that's why I'm really excited about the future of game development, for engines like Unreal. Like Unreal Engine 5 is going to change game development. But you guys gotta push these devs to actually use these features. I talked about on the last stream of like why holding back the term holding back Series S is not true. I stated for a couple of reasons because it's like a rotating statement that people keep making where Series S is holding back gaming. Um, but when you have all these new features that are made for optimizing, and you have all these technical things within the Series S, people need to start using it. These developers need to um, be incentivized to use some of these features. Right now, they are not because you can't use some of the next gen features across the board. So they're kind of like, is it worth it? So I'm hoping you'll see a lot of next gen features with first party games. So you'll see, for example, on the Xbox side of things, you'll see um, Forza use a lot of next gen technology. You'll see, um, I mean, I can't really say much. I'll just say, as a previous Microsoft employee, I'll say I hope they use all of the features in all future games. Aaron says, and Unity, to be honest, the things that some devs make in that engine is just stunning. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Unity. Um, that's the first game engine I learned how to use. I feel like the interface is super easy. Um, what makes Unreal easy is the blueprint system. So for those people who suck at coding, they could just learn the blueprints and learn how to connect um, statements together. Like if I wanted a guy to go on fire, um, like if he walks in this area, he will light on fire. And blueprint, you can find different commands. Be like when player enters this zone, put the zone set on fire. So you kind of like can connect things. And the blueprint system, which is really useful for people who suck at coding. Unity, you're using the traditional C sharp, things like that. Um, JavaScript. I think they started to implement a lot of plugins where you can use something like a blueprint system. But Unity is great. Um, it's I don't know. It's an interesting engine. The way it handles lighting. It could go from handling lighting pretty bad. Okay, here's the thing. Unreal naturally, as soon as you turn Unreal on, Unreal Engine 4 or 5 on, the lighting is like beautiful. Like you don't have to do much to make the lighting beautiful in Unreal. It just is. You just turn it on. It already has like a sun in the map. You put some materials in there. It handles it very well. That's why a lot of people love using Unreal. You can make things look pretty very quickly. Um, which is why it needs a lot more optimization features because you can look pretty, but will it run well? Unity, on the other hand, some games could look even better than Unreal in some cases, but you kind of have to work a little bit more for it in the engine. I'm speaking from the development side. Like things are not going to look pretty right away. You have to really tweak some of the materials. If something is supposed to look shiny, you have to go in, make sure X materials on, and making So it's on the development side. That's why you see some games on Unity looking trash, and then you see some games on Unity looking like, wow, more people should use Unity. Um, that's my opinion, anyways. Poison Maniac says, which Unreal version? Um, so for example, I use Unreal today. UE5 is what I'm talking about. So UE5, Unreal Engine 5 is kind of what's going to change gaming over time with some of these features that they're putting in the engine. People have to use it though. And like for example, it's kind of a new engine, so some development studios are still using Unreal Engine 4. Um, Hellblade is using Unreal Engine 5. So it's going to be a kind of like an industry shift over time where development studios needs to start using um these features. Like RDNA 2 features are not being used on third party studios. Like a lot of RDNA 2 features are not being used by third party studios because Sony is the most popular platform and it doesn't have those features. So why build next gen features for a console that doesn't have it? It has versions of it, but it's not really RDNA 2. So why would I put that into my pipeline if my goal is to solely develop stuff for the PS5 and maybe have a version for the Series X? So that's why you see such a disparity in performance. You see Series X and S doing really well in one comparison, then you see another one where PS5 is performing better. It's just like that. Hey Trinity. Hey 3-Bit, just stopping by to say hello. Hope that you're having a great week so far. Thank you, Trinity. I always try to drop by your streams. I seen you were playing like Gotham Knights, and now you're playing Hogwarts and stuff. So I appreciate you for coming on by. Definitely part of the community. So people go check out her streams. She's an awesome member of the community as well. Aaron says, heard ahead of Will of the Wisp that a lot of devs look forward to that release since it kind of became a best practice example for other devs to look at. Was you aware of that as well? Oh no, I had no idea. That like me speaking on Unity and stuff like that. Like, is this my experience of what I've seen with those engines? Like, I've seen a lot of I've seen a lot of really bad Steam games that use Unity, and it looks absolutely trash. And then I've seen examples of the Unity being used well, and then top that with my experience with Unity, is where I came to that conclusion. Like I was like, Unity is a beautiful engine. You kind of have to work for it a little bit on the lighting side of things, but once it's in there, it can look better than Unreal in some cases. But the thing is, Unreal just naturally looks beautiful. So, fun speculation. I hate the idea of everything running in Unreal. We would lose a lot of the special sauce that makes what sim games are. I agree. Yeah, I mean, I agree. That's kind of why I'm sort of advocating for other engines. I think other engines are a good thing to have. It's kind of like why competition is always good. It's good that Microsoft exists for Sony, because if not, Sony, the way Sony treats the industry, like they'd be elbowing other competitors, like Sega, for example. If you guys should watch like a documentary on the console wars, like back in when PS2 times, or like the way Sony pretty much destroyed Sega. Dang, competition is good. It's a good thing. So I apply that to engines as well. Um, Technology studios are always going to kind of compete with each other and push each other to make technology easier, better. So other game engines that applies to as well. I feel like there's a problem with a lot of people using Unreal, in my opinion. Um, there's like an Unreal look for a lot of games. Like a lot of games have this look. They're like, oh, that's Unreal. The way certain things pop up in the environment, it's like that's Unreal. Or the way it handles lighting, shaders, it just has this look to it that, you know, like it screams that it's using Unreal, as opposed to a whole other engine like Slipspace, where you're like, that's different. But you can, to be fair, Mav, you can fight the engine and change it in a way where people even question if it's made on Unreal Engine. Like Hi-Fi Rush, I think, was made on Unreal Engine. That doesn't feel like an Unreal game, right? So it's really up to the developer to create unique experiences for these games. Um, and that's it at the end of the day. And some developers are gonna use the shaders that's already in Unreal the way, like, because you have a lot of pre-built things in Unreal. You have a sun. As soon as you start an Unreal project, there is a sun. There's lighting. You could change the sun's location. You can mess with the materials and stuff like that. If you don't touch that, you're like, okay, that's fine. Cool. I have a sun. Let's build the rest of the game. Uh, that's the feeling that people are getting. They don't. It's like it could be like a subconscious thing. Like you never change the sun. You never change the way the light hits the material in the ground. You never change, like there's certain movement sets with walking, for example, that's naturally in Unreal. If you never change that, like movement speeds and stuff like that, then people are gonna start catching on. Like this feels generic, right? Like why does this feel generic? It's because you didn't change anything. uh, so with ease of use for engines comes you actually changing what you should for your particular game. So that is a definitely a conversation. um, but I love all game engines. I could talk game engines and tech all day because that's the industry I'm in. So if you see me being passionate about it, or that's because it's literally what I do. So there's certain topics I love to talk about. It's tech, it's animation, and things like that. That I want to start bringing to uh, that side of things is I feel like what makes me different and something I can actually give insight to, as opposed to just talking about gaming. Because while these articles, I love talking about things going on in the gaming industry, like Sony has to finally provide these documents, um, which is interesting. They have to provide something that we haven't had access to. Um, as a fan, as a gamer, we don't know what some of these things look like. So cool. Love talking about that stuff. Um, but yeah, I'm an animator, right? So I love talking about things dealing with my job too. Aaron says, "Where do you think Ubisoft would be right now if it weren't for massive entertainment?" Um, hmm. Can I answer this? I did work at Ubisoft. Uh, uh, where'd they be? I don't know. I think they would be fine. The thing about Ubisoft, I don't have a positive experience with Ubisoft. I've talked about this on other shows. It was one of the worst companies I've had to work with, and it made me not want to do game development. Working with them, because I'm like, dang, this is what game development is like. Like I had such a negative experience working for UB that I thought that that's what game development was like across the board. So I mean, I have kind of that perspective for UB. So I don't know if I'm the right person to ask that question. But that is a good question. A massive entertainment. They're working on some really cool stuff. I will say that. I think Ubisoft needs the diversity. Um, Seeing as they have a formula for how games are created. Like this is how this game should work, open world. People call it the Ubisoft formula. But within their company too, you have uh a lot of people who are really um wanting to change the way Ubisoft is run. Like they are really passionate, and then the people above them are not. They don't see it in that way. That makes sense. Aaron says, "Yeah, I also think that, but looking at what they put on Massive right now tells me that they are betting a lot on them Avatar, Star Wars. Yep, and I've seen what that team has been putting together, and my opinion, Massive is one of the best teams over there, and they definitely do have a lot more freedom than the rest of Ubisoft. That's what it felt like for me working there. They definitely are one of the good teams over there. They have a lot more leeway in with their leadership. Like there's so many teams where we are not even we. I don't work there anymore, but they they are really restricted, and it's really unfortunate because you have people, developers who are really passionate working over there, and they are just being blocked by people that have nothing to do with game development. You have people who are like, according to the data, that feature that you want in the game, um, that's not going to be good for our data set. So let's take that out. It's so that's why I hated working there. It's like if you are a creative person, if you love Ubisoft, if you love their franchises, and then you start working there, you realize how much is being blocked. Like how many experiences go to die working there. Um, it's frustrating because you have people there who love Assassin's Creed, who love Sam Fisher, who love other franchise, Rainbow Six, stuff like that. Love the previous iterations of what a Tom Clancy game actually is, right? And like a Tom Clancy game is supposed to be I mean, it's based on Tom Clancy, who was very tactical, right? He had books on um, missions and things like that, which is why the Tom Clancy games were so interesting because it was like tactical games. It wasn't necessarily like run and gun, collect experience and things like that. It was more so like coming from a tactical perspective, which was much needed in my opinion. So like games like Splinter Cell, where it's about stealth, where you're like you go on the wall, you're like this, and you jump down, and you're like, oh, this is super cool. They geared away. They geared away from games like that because in their eyes, it's not as profitable. So a lot of decisions that could potentially be game changing, um, that differentiates their portfolio, is being hindered upon market decisions that's deemed not profitable. So I've I have a lot to say about Eevee, and it's something I held my tongue on for a while. I've talked about bits and pieces on different shows, um, but it really is just it's kind of just sad that it's happening. There are other teams again like Massive where I do have more expectation for teams like that because they're not being as affected as some other teams in UB. So yeah, yeah. I will say after UB, a positive experience I did have a positive experience working with Fable. That team was it was like, I'm like, this is what it's supposed to be like. I had no idea. I thought like game development was trash, and to be fair, I realized through my time at these studios that I like doing commercials more. So now I'm mostly doing TV commercials. One just launched today. If you guys want to check it out, it's an Affleck commercial for poolside. And it's pretty much the duck sunbathing outside. He has like this thing. um, he has a, I forget what it's called, sun reflector thing. Um, Being a part of that commercial was really really awesome. Getting to be a part of like the decision making of like making different content. Some content's not out yet, so I can't talk about it. But yeah, being a part of that was is something I'm doing going forward. Is making TV commercials and things like that. Like I much prefer doing that. Aaron said, "Well, that because it's dissolved, right? You should move to Sweden and join Massive. They are looking for animators for their Star Wars game." Oh, see, I sometimes get a message from like Psycho and them. They send me like these job postings for these different studios. Um, I would. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying no. I'm just really happy doing. Right now, I am the only animator for the Affleck Duck. Affleck has introduced a mascot as well, another mascot, which is a goat, and I created the goat. Um, so I know he's like, it's just an insurance company, whatever. But I'm actually super proud of that work. Like, I'm the only animator for the duck, so whenever you guys see the duck animated, it's my work, which I had no idea it was such a small thing. Like, I always picture it was a team of animators. It's just me. um, I like that stuff. So we'll see how long I end up doing it. But right now, I feel pretty good. Like, this is pretty fun. Fuzzy says, "Is it creative freedom with commercials for the preference?" Yeah, I think it's the fact that maybe it's a sense where it's just a different pipeline. Um, with commercials and with some of these commercials, like I feel more. Maybe it's I feel more of a sense of ownership of like the fact that I am the only animator for Affleck. Um, and I can look at commercials and be like, oh yeah, that's my work. And with game development, there's a lot of stuff I still can't talk about, and I don't even know if some stuff that I made is still in the game. So maybe it's that sense too. Like I don't get that immediate sense of dopamine. Game development is years and years of work that may or may not be there. Like my work on Fable, I have no idea if it's still in the game after I'm not there anymore. Um, Maybe it's that. So the game industry is so secretive too. Um, like certain things I worked on, I don't think I could ever talk about on shows, which is like dang, why are you guys so secret? you know, um, which I get it. I definitely get it, but maybe that's why I like working on commercials more. It's a quicker turnaround. Um, if it's like I jump on different projects. So Affleck is just one of the people we do commercials for. I'm also doing the commercials for Holiday Inn, which is completely different. Going to their different hotels and making their social media for Holiday Inn. Um, I don't know how much I could talk about other clients, but for example, we did commercials with Jack Harlow for Buffalo Wild Wings. We did like their Buffalo Wild Wings commercials. Was on set with like Jack Harlow and stuff. That stuff is cool. I don't know. I just really enjoy working on commercials, and it's something. Took me some time to realize that I like it a little bit more than game development. Now, that's not saying I won't ever go back to game development because I'm an animator. Um, and I need my animation feel. And some of these commercials aren't animation, so I probably will return to game development. Uh, I'm technically making a game for a Half-Life right now, which I can't talk about. But so that's kind of cool and kind of like in between what I do, doing a game for Half-Life. Trinity says, 3-bit, thank you for all that you do, bro, for helping these awesome Affleck commercials come to life. They crack me up. Yeah. It's so funny being on the set and or having conversations where you're just like people you'll be in a meeting, right? You'll be in a meeting room and we're talking about the commercials and creating it and stuff. And out of context, it sounds ridiculous. Like, are we sure the duck should wear this? Like, does it? How much does it affect what we mean to tell with our story? Like, out of context, that sounds so crazy. Like we're talking about a duck at the end of the day, right? But the team does such a good job at like uh bringing the messaging together and making it enjoyable to watch insurance commercials, you know. So I really like that. Aaron says, here in Sweden, I think I need to go and get some shut eye. Been good listening, chatting with you, playing some skate. Be safe. Thanks for tonight. Of course, man. Of course. Thanks for chatting. You brought up some great conversational points that I could jump off of. As this is kind of what I wanted the show to be. I talk. You guys are in chat. You could ask me whatever you want about the gaming industry, about anything. I'm an open book. So I appreciate you coming by. And that's awesome you're playing Session. I was playing Skate 3 last night, but I haven't played that one yet. That's awesome. Yeah. It's really cool. It's like it's an interesting industry to be in. Like, fun fact, the Aflac duck is being puppeted by the same people who do Baby Yoda. So it's like same puppeteers. I don't think that puppeteer industry is that big. I feel like it's really small. But that's still pretty cool. Like they have a puppet duck. The way it works is for our big commercials we have the puppet duck. You have all these puppeteers moving the duck around. At our events we have a real duck. And then sometimes for our social posts where they come to me is if the duck is doing something crazy. Like I just animated the duck break dancing. It was one of the hardest animations I had to do. Duck was break dancing, and if he's doing like really complicated movements and stuff, that's where I kind of have to come in and animate it. So on my end, I have like a CG duck. I have to simulate all of his feathers. He has millions, like hundreds of thousands of feathers that I simulate on him. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do outside of these podcasts. So appreciate y'all. I was gonna have a segment. I could still show it. Where I kind of go into some different animation tips and stuff. Maybe I'll do it next time. Um, I'm trying to just figure out if I should. I have some time. I have some time. I'll briefly go over something and then we will close the show. For those who are watching, be sure to tune in to FSP. That is a show from the Fun Speculation channel. I am there every Monday, and make surprise appearances on Fridays. Um, really fun show to be on. Okay, so I have a brief 3-bit tip section. It's a segment I want to do on the show. So I have something up. Let's see if I could get it running. Okay, there you go. So here is how most animations for commercials go sometimes. So what I'll do, what a lot of commercials do, is you start off with a concept, you sketch a pitch, and this also applies to game development, by the way. So it kind of goes hand in hand, but you sketch out the concept of what you want to be shown, so that way you're not spending so much time developing something that you're not even sure is going to be good. So it's called an animatic. Create an animatic, and in the animatic, you're figuring out a couple things. You're figuring out how good is the timing of something. Do I want my character to be here or there? What's in the background? And since it's a sketch, you're like, okay, you figure out what assets you need too. So if you're doing a sketch, you're like, okay, this person's in a warehouse. There's a big box in the back. There is a like a light pole. There's a bed frame. Then you send the animatic to someone who is supposed to model all this stuff, and they have a list. They're like, okay, I have to make X, Y, and Z. So you're not spending time making something that'll never be in the film or video game. So that's why it's beneficial to work on it in that way. So this was a short film I did on Muro. It's like a short horror film. So you can see the process I was talking about. It's pretty much just animatic, me shooting the reference from the animatic, and then I did a first pass of animation. So a lot of the commercials I do is in this vein. It's kind of like in these steps. So after I made the animatic, I shot reference at my old house of what was happening. So here's kind of what it looks like. Okay. So you see, like, it's me jumping on. I used to have a trampoline in like my family's yard or something. You see me running, and then I like jump off of this trampoline. I live in Georgia. It normally does not snow, so that was crazy that it actually snowed that day. And then I take my movements of whatever's happening and apply it. Obviously, I'm not gonna jump off a building. I was surprised I even jumped off this trampoline. You gotta commit to those actions. So I got Tom Cruise. I just took a video of Tom Cruise jumping off. and his movements were good enough. So Tom Cruise can do it. You know, he's my stunt double in this case. This is sort of like the first pass on it, but it ended up sort of looking like. Alright, and then. Okay, so, and then. This is after passes and passes, lighting, rendering, compositing, all that different stuff. This is what it ended up looking like. Skip this. So yeah, that's a short horror film I made a while ago. I thought it'd be interesting to do some segments like how I create certain things. If you guys are interested in that sort of segment, like how game development works, what is the process of making levels and stuff like that, because I think it's awesome that we can talk about topics that are happening in the gaming industry space, and I have a lot to say about those topics, but I'm also I'm a developer, so like I feel like it would be very insightful to also hint on how we make those things and come from that perspective as well. So if you guys do want to see that, for people who are watching later, you can put in the comments down below if that's something you would like to see more of, or if you just like me talking about gaming topics. Sure, I'll talk about that too. So I'm gonna end it here. Poison Maniac, that you said this is quite interesting and it looks really cool. Thank you, man. Again, that's like a short horror film I made a while ago, but it does kind of speak to a process that can apply to a lot of different things. I am personally cool. Awesome. So maybe I'll do it. Maybe I will. But appreciate everybody for coming on by. This was one of my favorite shows so far. So thank you all for dropping in. For those who are watching later, thank you for checking it out. I will do these shows every Wednesday at 6:30 ish, right? I was a little late today. I was like 6:35 ish or so. And it was really funny. I posted on Twitter and I had no idea what day it was. I thought the show was yesterday and I was freaking out. I was like, no, I need to be better. But the show was not even. My day was, I didn't even know what was going on. So appreciate y'all. Find me here Wednesdays 6:30 p.m. I'm on FSP with Fuzzy, who said great Q&A. Appreciate you, buddy. FSP every Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern time. And then occasionally Xbox Ultimate Fridays on Fun Speculation channel. You guys will see more videos on here at some point. I'm still working on a lot of different Affleck commercials and just different commercials in general. So it's a lot easier for me to make these type of videos on my channel. But I love doing analytic research on the industry. I had a lot of videos in the past you guys could check out on this channel where I talked about what studios Microsoft going to acquire. That video was very successful. So I might do some of those videos. It takes me a long time because I like to look at things from a broad perspective and not be biased and do research essentially. So those videos can take me a long time. So it's easier to do stuff like this where I can answer questions, be like, here, bam, bam, bam. But we'll see. We'll see. Trinity, appreciate you for coming on by. 3-bit tips might be a segment towards the end of my shows where I just go through a video, animation, and put some tips about how some things work. But love y'all. And I will see you on the next episode. Bye, guys.